like the way we've generally taught writing is to tell people what's wrong with their words. People get all those red marks on their papers growing up, and they don't feel competent, and so they have a lot of insecurities and self-doubt. And it's amazing because I've worked with writers of all kinds, of course, but thousands and thousands of writers at National Novel Writing Month, and so few people will say I'm a writer or I'm a real writer until they've maybe been published. But my definition of being a real writer is if you sit down and write, you know. And so I think a lot of times people don't believe that their story matters, and I think that that's the most important thing, actually. I think if you don't believe your story matters, you won't even think about writing word one. If you don't believe your story matters, you won't get through that muddy middle of your memoir or your book, or your essay even. You won't finish it. You won't reach out to agents. You won't publish it. You won't promote it. All those things. You got to believe your story matters at every stage. And so the why of writing matters a lot too. Like, why is your story important? But so many people talk themselves out of writing it instead of talking themselves into writing it. Like they might say, my idea is not original. It's been told before. Or I can't. Back to the I can't write things. They compare their writing of their rough draft to maybe one of their favorite writers, and it doesn't measure up. But that's the case for all of us, even those great writers we admire. Their rough draft is always rough. That's why it's called rough draft. I prefer to call it a discovery draft, actually.
Ah,
So yeah, it's just a labyrinth. But and I think sometimes, like on the other side too, some people's memoirs are about horrific events and experiences they've had, and it can be triggering to write those stories. It's fearful to think about them again. So that can be a kind of touchy subject to get over or an obstacle to get over. So yeah, there's just a lot of different reasons I think why people don't write their memoirs. But here's the thing: like we started Memoir Nation partly because when my father died in 1997, he he'd never written. He was college educated. He was a lawyer, but he'd never written about his life. He wasn't an expressive writer. And when he died, I just kept thinking, if he'd only written 10,000 words about his life, if he'd only preserved some of his stories, not to publish them, but just to hand them down, it would have been just so invaluable. And so I think, when somebody dies, all their stories go with them. And that's just a sad thing. So part of the Memoir Nation is we want to help people write their story for legacy reasons. But also, when you write a memoir, you gain self-knowledge, you gain knowledge of the world, and you gain knowledge of all those people around you. So that was a very rambling answer to your question, but yeah, that's kind of like it, I think.
well, tell us how Memoir Nation works. What does it mean to be a part of Memoir Nation?
Yeah, so we, like I said, we want to help people tell their story and make sure and believe in their story. And so we offer a variety of levels of support. And like one big way, well, I'll just start with how we kick it off, which you can sign up for now. It's called Jan Your Story. And it's a challenge to write 500 words a day in January, so 15,000 words total. And the premise is we want to ignite your memoir in January. We want to get it going so that you can create some momentum so that you can finish it sometime. And then we offer several different tiers of support. We offer a free tier. We will always have a free tier. And Jan Your Story is free. You just have to go to memoirnation.com, and if you go to the Jan Your Story tab, you can sign up. And like I said, you don't have to sign up on January 1. You can sign up now. But then there's like a $99 tier, a $299 tier, or $2,500 lifetime membership, and you get different levels of support and services for that. But like I said, we've got a community, and so one big part of Memoir Nation is the community itself. We have this very snazzy community, online community, and it's growing, and we're adding things to it every day. And for instance, during January Story, we have write-ins that are happening nearly every day of January, where we gather like this on Zoom and we write together. And the first day we had over 200 people writing together, and it was just so galvanizing and inspiring. And that's the thing. A lot of writing, we think of it as a solitary affair, but we get juice from other people, and that creative juice is just really enlivening and empowering. And so that's a big premise of it, is that we don't want to just be a place to have people write in a solitary way. We want to bring people together. And then with memoir too, there's all these subtopics, right? Like you want to maybe want to write a memoir about motherhood or daughterhood, or you might want to write a memoir about an addiction. There's just such a spectrum. And so we're going to create like different kinds of affinity groups and chat spaces in the communities so that people can connect according to their topic. Yeah.
Grant, the funny thing is I started the whole idea of doing the Okoboji Writers Retreat because I wanted to attend something like that.
Mhm.
And of course I can never attend
No.
the sessions because I'm running around putting out fires or whatever. But I'm thinking about signing up for the January Nation thing so I can see what this is like and participate in it. What do you do? Do you do prompts? Where'd you go? I
We have
lost you.
prompts. We have a whole big prompt area on the website. We have a newsletter. There's a prompt every week in the newsletter. When we gather on Zoom like this, we offer prompts. And part of January's story is you get a daily action every day, a prompt, and what we call like a pep talk, like an inspirational essay on a different topic of writing. So there are different areas or different ways to support. And I totally get it, Julie. You know what? Like January's story, my friend, I co-founded Memoir Nation with Brooke Warner. Memoir Nation is also a podcast, by the way, and we have a bunch of like really great author guests. It's a weekly podcast and it's free. But Brooke and I keep joking that we are everybody else is doing our event except us. Like we're having a hard time writing our 500 words per day because of all the work that goes into it. So yeah, so if you want to do something and have the experience, don't start an organization, right? Is that the lesson here? I lost you. I lost Julie. She was saying that she was having problems with her internet. I think we lost her. Uh-oh.
I'm here.
Chuck is here to save the day. Chuck, do you want to ask some questions? Or I can crowdsource them.
Yes. When we have these discussions, Grant, we frequently lapse into immediately launching into the topic we're covering, which is what we've done here with you, going into Memoir Nation. I want to do that. Take us, for everybody that does not know you yet, though. Take us from Iowa to where you are now,
Yeah.
from growing up in Oskaloosa, Iowa, to what you're doing now. What was your route?
Yeah, it was a very circuitous route in a way because, when I was growing up, now there are all these writing communities, all these writing events, and it's really easy to connect with other writers. When I was growing up in Oskaloosa, I didn't know another writer. And now there are, I think, 3 or 4 like operating writing groups, in the bookstore there, or that's their centerpiece. And I will say that Donald Call spoke at my high school graduation at my request, and it was a wonderful moment. He was like a superstar who walked into town, and he had a book signing. But I signed. I had a newspaper column. Donald Call's column was called Over the Coffee, and my high school newspaper column was called Over the Pepsi because I was a big Pepsi
Of
drinker.
course.
Yeah. So I brought it in and I signed it for him and gave it to him. I was kind of arrogant back in those days. Anyway, so I went from there to Grinnell College, and I decided to be. When I was 20, the basic story is that I had to choose a major in college, and I was deciding between being an econ major and an English major. And very fortunately, I did a study abroad program in France, and I sat around cafes and I read novels and wrote in my journal and stuff, and decided to be a writer. And never really looked back and never had a plan B. I'm still amazed I didn't have a plan B, and I can't believe that my parents didn't try to stop me in some way. But yeah, so I went out and moved to Chapel Hill, North Carolina with some friends, and then moved to San Francisco and traveled to Mexico, all those kinds of things. And I often tell people no one really told me I was a good writer. And I was even up until my late 20s. I think I published my first story in a journal maybe when I was 26 or 7. Anyway,
Jeez.
my thing is that you'll hear this from almost every creative writing professor is it's not the most talented writer in the room who makes it, it's the person who's the most determined and bullheaded. And that's what I was. I was just like, I'm going to work hard at this. I love it, and I will make myself a good writer. And I hope I did. I did a brief stint at the Des Moines Register, and I was totally intimidated by superstar Chuck Offenberger, but he was very
Oh,
nice to me. And yeah, I kind of learned a little bit about journalism. I loved the Des Moines Register back in those days. That was the early or mid '90s, actually. I was there in '97. But then, yeah, so the rest of it, I got my MFA at San Francisco State. And then I very fortunately found a professional home working for writing organizations. I worked for the National Writing Project, which is focused on helping teachers teach writing better. And then I worked at National Novel Writing Month, which is a creative writing program that would go year round. But our big thing was is in the month of November, um, the challenge was to write 50,000 words of your novel in a month. So about 1,700 words a day, which is super tough, super strenuous. And so that gave me the idea for Memoir Nation and to scale the challenge back to something more doable for people. So 500 words a day instead of 1,700.
have you, Grant, have you been, as I listen to you outline your background, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. Have you focused mainly on nonfiction, or have you been, it sounds like you've also dipped into fiction somewhat, at least.
I was mainly focused on fiction and writing novels, and I wrote the occasional nonfiction. But I have written books on creativity and writing, so I've written nonfiction books, and I kind of dallied in journalism a little bit. But yeah, so I mainly focused on fiction and long fiction, and then I discovered flash fiction, which is defined as stories under 1,000 words. And I got very addicted to writing 100-word stories, and so I have
Oh my
this.
gosh. I remember
Yeah,
that now about you. That's right.
yeah. So I have a.
Grant, I can't even write a lead in 100 words.
Oh my God, I don't believe it. I know it's tough. It's tough. Like when I started trying to do 100 words, I could only get them down to 150 words, and I kept trying and trying and trying, and then I just found the beauty of writing a 100-word story is it makes you pay attention to every single word. There can be no flab in the story. It's just a different style of storytelling, and it really suited me. So yeah, so I do a lot of flash fiction writing now, and in fact, this book, which is going to be blurry on the screen, it's called Something Out There in the Distance. It is actually coming to a bookstore near you tomorrow. It's being published tomorrow. That's its launch date. And a friend of mine who I used to wait tables with in San Francisco, she's a fantastic photographer, and she took all these wonderful photos of the Southwest. And I initially was going to write a 100-word story to each photo, but I wrote them a little bit, all different lengths actually, but nothing too long. And so they all fit together in what I'm calling a flash novel. So it's essentially, there are only 6 or 7 thousand words in the book, but it feels like a novel to me because of the photos. So it's very like it's expansive, and it's about this kind of these two tragic lovers on a road trip through the Southwest.
Wow.
Yeah,
I can't wait to read it. Somewhere out in the distance, I see our leader, Julie Gamick, has found her way back to the internets.
that was
And
tricky, Julie.
yeah, so go jump back in.
You're mute. You're muted. Are you?
Yeah, I've always wanted to tell her, you're muted, Julie.
You're mute. Yeah, yeah. Julie's never really muted.
No, I know. There's no muting Julie
Even
Gamick,
when
that's
she's
for
muted,
sure.
she's not muted. See, she's a presence here, but she can't unmute.
That's
I don't know. I don't think I can unmute you.
well, at any rate, you're coming back to, I think Julie said it was the 23rd of January, you're going to be at Beaverdale Books.
Yeah, 23rd of January. Yeah, I love Beaverdale Books, and I'm actually like I have a trailer for this book. It's kind of like a music video featuring the photos and this band, the Renderers. And I'm going to project some of the photos on a screen and read the little stories that go with them, and then yeah,
Well,
begin a
that'll be a fun,
conversation.
is that going to be an evening time thing?
Evening time, and right now I can't remember if it's 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock.
Well, it
I
sounds like a good time.
Yeah,
I think
thank
it's
you.
6:30. I figured out how to turn my mic on. Sorry
Welcome,
about
Julie.
that. Yeah,
No,
nice to see everybody. That's the nice thing about this crew. Everybody just steps in when
I
they
know.
need to.
You know what?
Well,
You,
all the rest of us were enjoying the heck out of the fact that for the first time any of us can remember you were muted.
I do want to say, Julie, it turns out Chuck's a good interviewer.
Oh, is he? Well, what do you know? Let me piggyback on that, Grant, because you know Chuck Offenberger. He's a career writer, and he's been in his lane, column writing for decades. What advice would you have for Chuck
Oh my
to
gosh.
Amen.
no, to stretch, to try something new, to do something a little different? I mean, we're all, get into our routines of how we do
Yeah.
things. Why don't you coach Chuck? Let's see how this works.
Well, it is interesting because I think as writers, I think with columnists, I don't know if do you remember the Michael Kinsey who used to be on Crossfire, and he
Yeah.
was a columnist, and he wrote one book, and it was a pretty slender book, and he said he'd never write a book again because his brain was wired for 700 words, and that's the writer he was. And I always thought that was really interesting because, and that's part of my thing with flash fiction is like when I was learning to write novels, my brain was wired for a really long story. So to write a 100-word story, which actually does have the elements of any story, meaning a beginning, middle, and end, a character who has a conflict and changes as a result, things like that. So you can do that in 100 words, it turns out. And so, I think like writing in multiple genres. Well, one, I'd tell Chuck, writing in multiple genres is good for your writing overall, and it's good just to try new things. Like every once in a while, you'll hear about football teams taking ballet classes. You know, and so try new things on the page. So he could write absurdist, Dada-esque poetry, or he could write 100-word stories, or he could write a family saga or a play. Anything, a western, anything is good for your writing. I wish, what? Now times I see some creative writing programs, and they'll make it a requirement for like their literary fiction writers to write like a fantasy novel or to take a fantasy novel writing class or a western, some genre class. And I think that's really good for a writer. Like I don't write genre fiction, but I think it would be really interesting for me to think about how to do that. Write a I always say someday I want to write a romance novel just for the hell of it. So so I'd tell him, yeah, just do some writing just for the hell of it. Just for fun. And here's the other thing. You know what? When I was growing up, I was saying how I didn't know any other writers in Oskaloosa, but when I was a kid, I would get an idea for a story and I'd just drop everything and go write the story just for the fun of it. And the thing that's too bad about becoming an adult is that oftentimes we don't do things just for the fun of it. Especially now that writing
Right.
is my career, I have a purpose for almost every word I write. But it's good just to play sometimes. So yeah, play.
It's funny, we brought in songwriters to the Okoboji Writers Retreat 2 years ago, and I don't think anybody thought it was a good idea when I put it out there. They thought, oh, why would you have a songwriter? But it has been so fun. Kyle Munson, who's a mutual friend and a colleague within the Writers Collaborative, did a review on a book called Everyone Has One Song in Them.
Yep, I know that
I
book.
may not have the title. Do
Jeff
you remember
Tweedy.
that book?
Jeff Tweedy. Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. It's a wonderful book. And so I was thinking, you played the baritone ukulele is in junior high school, right? But then, let it go. I wonder if there's a song. I wonder, and wouldn't it be fun to see what would happen with Chuck if you could just sit down at a typewriter and lie? You know, you could make stuff up um, instead of being factual and get everything just right and accurate. And you could just
You're,
have
ta-
somebody say
you're talking
something just
about you're talking about Fox News, Julie.
well, that too flash friction. Well, let's open it up to folks on the call besides us and see what folks I do see we have some members of the Iowa Writers Collaborative on the call, which I'll go
Cool.
to first. But if any of you have a question or a comment for Grant, please raise your hand and chime on in. But Bob Leonard, would you like to say hello to your buddy Grant and
Oh, is
ask him
Bob
a
here?
question? Yeah, Bob's here.
Oh, there's 34. I didn't see everybody.
By the way, Grant, Bob Leonard and another member of the collaborative, Jason Walsmith, who you might have met last year. He's a musician, and a photographer, are interviewing women who've been incarcerated.
Hmm.
And their stories are absolutely fascinating. It's a powerful series, but I
Great.
thought I
Uh,
gave Bob enough time to come on. Bob, are you are
I
you
want to
coming
say
on?
hello. I see Diane Crickham Johnson's on the call from Oskaloosa, so I want to say
Oh,
hello to
good.
her. Our
Great.
families knew each
Anyone
other when we were
else?
very young. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
I want to hear Bob's question. I do want to say, per your thing about songwriting, I've never written a song, and that's silly, but it's good to remember that Bob Dylan won the Nobel Prize for Literature for his songs. So there's
Wow.
crossover.
Good point.
Yeah,
Good point.
yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna go to Bryce Oakley, and then Joni, you'll be following Bryce.
All right,
Bryce, you'll
let's
need to
hear it.
turn your microphone on.
Put me on the spot.
Well, hello, Grant. We've not met, but I'm familiar with your work. But I wanted to do a very short 10,000 foot view of what you do for a living and what a number of others on this do. I'm reading Yuval Harari's book Nexus, and in chapter two of that book, the chapter two is stories, unlimited connections. Allow me just three sentences, and then perhaps you can comment on it. Uh, in there, he says, instead of building a network from human to human chains alone, as the Neanderthals did, stories provided Homo sapiens with a new type of chain, human to story chains. In order to cooperate, sapiens no longer had to know each other personally, they just had to know the same story. A story can thereby serve as a central connector with an unlimited number of outlets into which an unlimited number of people can plug.
Hmm.
And I think that is a pretty succinct description of the cultural value of what you and others, whether you write long stuff or short stuff, or whether it's bound up in a book or if it's a Bible, they are stories and they are a cultural value. And maybe you can comment in kind of the wider lens, if that seems to be worthwhile of comment.
Bryce, that's one of the best questions I've ever gotten. I love that quote. I want you to send it to me because you know
Sure.
what? I've been constantly trying to make the case for writing and books, basically my entire adult life, and I think they're very undervalued. I think the skill of writing tends to be undervalued in our educational system, and just the way that we don't recognize how stories, as you said, they connect us, right? They are this like invisible network, and we are formed by the stories that we receive, all sorts of stories, and we form the world with our stories, and that's why I was like um, offering that at the beginning of this call about how stories change our culture and form our culture, and anything that happens on the policy or legal law, congressional side, whatever, it happens because of stories in the world. And so one way to think about that too is like I like to think about if you go back 100 years, so back to 1926, think about going into a bookstore and think about what stories you'll encounter. Most of them are by rich white dead men. You
Yeah.
know, now walk into Beaverdale Books, you'll see a totally different variety of books. And so we got a long way to go, but we've come a long way. And I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves that we've come a long way. And it's been through our exchange of stories, exactly what that quote you read said. Yeah. And stories have a purpose. They're not just, I mean, one purpose, sure, it's escape, it's like entertainment. But another purpose, one of the initial reasons supposedly that the old cave people told stories was to, again, tell people about what they needed to fear in the world, tell people where they needed to go when they're hunting. So they also have a very practical purpose and an emotional purpose.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bryce, we have a request, a couple requests for you to put that quote in the chat if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, great. Joni, you're next. Thanks so much, Bryce.
Hi, Grant. I feel like I'm talking to like a celebrity, sort of.
You're
So
not.
I'm a member of Memoir Nation,
All
and
right. Woo-hoo.
thank you for like creating it. And I've had this story in my brain and my heart for, well, since 1997. And just, I'm a former newspaper reporter. And so I can write a good news story, but can I write a memoir? And that was always sort of and so I sat with that for years. And of course, for the last 30 plus years, I've been a labor union organizer. That's a whole other story. Anyways, I went to the Okoboji Writers Retreat in 2024 because I grew up in Spencer. And anyways, I live in the Twin Cities now. That's a whole other story we could talk about. And so it was at that retreat that I got enough encouragement to actually start writing. And so in like a little over a year, I'd written a whole 18,000 words. Not great. I had started Jan Your Story. It's amazing with just being on a Zoom call with whether it's 50 people or 200 people, nobody's saying anything,
I know.
right? But I have it marked down on my calendar. That's my time. And I have written over 500 words every day. And by the end of the month, I'm going to have almost doubled my number of words in 1 month. And so I just want to say thank you.
Oh,
I want to tell anyone who's even remotely interested, sign up for Memoir Nation. I took a class with Maggie Smith, amazing. I just signed up for a class with Amanda Knox. I cannot wait.
yeah.
It's really, and so I'm hoping that at some point you will teach memoir at the Okoboji Writers Retreat.
Absolutely. I think Julie's got me signed up for it already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So yeah, you know what? I'm not far from you. You know, I am a recent. I just started writing. Well, I've been dabbling in my own memoir for about 5 years, but I haven't truly embraced it as my genre until relatively recently. And that, I mean, it started, because of my age and because of all the great guests we had on our podcast, including Amanda Knox and Maggie Smith. And yeah, so we've been really blessed to have them as instructors. So thank you for giving that plug. And for January story, it's really interesting. Like when I was talking about Brooke, my partner, not my life partner, my business
Right.
partner and podcast partner, but yeah, it's even though it's hard for us to show up and write that 500 words, and we had both let our memoirs lapse before this event, but it's really helped us re-engage. Like this morning, I woke up. Normally, I would not have written my memoir. I would have gone through the 200 emails in my queue, but I carved out that half hour where I knew I could write 500 words, and I did it, and it was so good for me in so many different ways. I used to say that if I didn't write, the days I didn't write, I was cranky. So I guess I've been cranky for about a month. I feel much I feel much happier today having written. So yeah, everybody, and like I said at the beginning, even though January story, it's to write 500 words every day of January, you can sign up now. We're really just about supporting writers, and you can write anything you want to. You can write a novel if you want to. Some people are writing in other forms. So yeah, thank you for that, Joni. I hope to see you next Okoboji.
I'm already signed up.
Oh,
Yep.
good,
Thank you.
good,
Yay.
good,
Thanks,
good.
Joni. That was great. And I marvel at all of the wonderful things going on, with Story Summit, with what you're doing, with what we're doing. Grant, I don't think I've told you, but I started an online class series featuring Okoboji people,
Mm-hmm.
and we're beginning that online class Wednesday night with Kali White Van Bali on
Cool.
memoir,
Love her.
and I'll be sure and put some things about January or what tell me the name
January
again.
story. Don't worry about it. It's
January's
tough.
story.
It's not a real word.
It's like drug companies come up with all these
Yeah.
names. Yeah, yeah. But there's just so much in terms of opportunities to help people grow and develop, and I just love it.
Yeah.
So
Can
if
I can I
you're
respond to one question in the chat?
yeah.
Mary McCarthy asks if I'm coming to Prairie Lights for book reading, and I don't mean to slam Prairie Lights here, but maybe. I reached out to them and they said no.
Oh,
So if everyone here could write them an angry letter and tell them they'd like to see me, that that'd be great. But yeah, I interrupted. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I
no,
should
I think
shouldn't
that's
joke so
funny.
much.
Well, that yeah, come to think of it, Nicole Bart did a book signing at another bookstore in Iowa City. I can't remember what it is. We should find out for you because there's more than one bookstore in Iowa City, Iowa.
Yeah, good. There should be.
All right, Bill Stapleton, you are next. You'll need to turn your microphone on, my dear.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yep.
Okay, great. Um, thank you for being on this podcast, Grant. Um,
sure.
uh, I'm I'm a little bit of a novice. I tend to do factual stuff, and so it's all sort of new to me and memoir writing. But have you um, what are things that are I'm speaking very because I know nothing about this. But are there any connections between like the storyteller, your project, and like public libraries and getting kids involved in telling their stories?
That's such a great question. Because I have worked a lot with libraries in past jobs, like at National Novel Writing Month, we had a whole program called Come Right In, and literally 1,000 libraries signed up to do it, and it was a very, kind of out of the box program where they could. Some libraries would be super ambitious and they'd get in authors and hold classes and writing groups, and others they would just say, "We're opening up this room for an hour every day to write." Kind of like Joni just said, it is amazing the power of sitting with other people just in silence and writing, even on Zoom. It's been surprising to me. And so I have this wonderful friend, former teacher. She runs the New York Times Learning blog, and she's super passionate. She's just found memoir herself, and we've been talking about developing a curriculum for schools, and just it will never be a true focus for us. I don't think we have the bandwidth right now, so it would take a lot of growth. But I do want to offer some way that's easy for schools and libraries to do that. I mean, our libraries need a lot of support. Our schools do too. And as Catherine told me, it was interesting because she was like, every single English teacher in the country is grappling with AI, right? And students using AI instead of writing their own material. And her thought, which was I think brilliant, was that if kids are writing about their own personal experiences, they won't be inclined to use AI. And so that's where I think one value of memoir writing is in the schools and libraries or in general, right? It's a way for us to find out who we are, to write about our traumas, to write about our breakthroughs, whatever it is. So yeah, so definitely want to work with libraries. And I think, libraries are so great about like doing exactly what they did at NaNoWriMo, is taking a program like that and implementing it. And, libraries are so much more about just an archive of books these days, right? They're community spaces, they're third spaces. So yeah, we definitely want to go there. So thanks for mentioning that.
Grant, I have a lot of questions for you, but I also understand you needed to hop off early. Let me
You
check
know
in with
what?
you about your time. Are you
Yeah,
okay?
why don't I be 10 minutes late for my lunch? I'll drive extra fast and I'll send you a bill for the speeding ticket.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I just if you need to go, just let me
Yeah, thank
know.
you.
But
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
um, let's talk about what you have learned from Okoboji. Not to pitch Okoboji, but it's a kind of a it's a kind of a different environment. At least that's what speakers tell me. It's they've
Hmm.
spoken all over the world at different conferences. But why is it different for you?
Oh, let me think. I mean, I think one thing I admire about Okoboji is just the community there. You feel it's easy to go to writing conferences, and I've gone to a bunch, and some of them are just more sort of institutional, and you just kind of feel a little bit more like cattle being prodded through. I don't know. You don't get a sense of intimacy or direct connection, and I think because Okoboji, it's a beautiful time of the year, this beautiful lake, this beautiful weather. You're all in the same space together. You're all walking back and forth on pathways to dinner. You have like Julie's really fun morning gathering. And I think like the teachers there, I don't know. There's probably something about Iowa Nice that weaves its way through the whole event. So yeah, I think it's really just the community, and I think community again, just talking about like what Joni brought up, it's an undervalued part of being a writer because most people think of writing as this solitary act, and it is obviously, but I tell you, I was a very solitary writer throughout most of my early life as a writer. For a variety of reasons, I think I was just insecure and didn't put myself out there, and thought I could do it alone. But have such a wide and wonderful network of writers who I'm in touch with now, and everything that I've been successful in my career, everything good that's happened to me has come through that network and that community.
Yeah,
So that's one of my top one or two tips for writers is don't undervalue the writing community. Go out there, connect with people, and writers are generally really supportive at all levels. I mean, some of the writers who make it big or whatever, they might not have time to respond to your email, but it's always amazing to me. Like when I said we've had all these wonderful guests on Memoir Nation, our podcast, it's amazing how generous people are with their time and they
right,
show up. And even like when I've asked people for blurbs, it is time consuming to blurb somebody's book.
right.
And it's just amazing to me, like that people are generous enough to do that. People who I might not barely know, and people who are very busy. So yeah.
Grant, there are people on this call I know who have never really pondered where to start with a
Mhm.
memoir. What advice do you have to them?
Oh, I mean, join Memoir Nation because we have plenty of resources for that.
Sure.
Um, but I mean, I usually, I mean, the thing is, memoir is not a complete life story. It's the story of an experience you have. So that's why I mentioned earlier there are topics like a mother-daughter memoir, or an addiction memoir, or a cancer memoir. Like usually there's some sort of theme, or kind of like experience shaping it. And so I think most memoir writers, though, they have a story to tell and they're driven by their story. They want to tell that story. But if you don't have like a burning, life experience, I also say that you don't have to have one of these big life experiences to write a memoir. In fact, I think I'm a pretty ordinary person in most regards, but I am writing a memoir that I think has a lot of meaning to me and that I hope to publish. And so I think it's really identifying your story. And so you might just start thinking about like what life experiences you've had. Just do a brainstorming, make a list. Pick some scenes of your life that you think about a lot or that you're troubled by. Actually, that's like I can't remember what writer who said this, but I saw this. He or she said that they write about what troubles them. What's tickling them, what an itch they can't get rid of. And I think that that's the case for most of our stories. Really need to figure something out. And so the poet Rilke, his best advice, I think about this often because this is the way I write. He said, "Write to the questions, not the answers." And so we all
Oh,
have
I like them.
we all have questions about our life, and so think about what questions you have about your life. Think about the times that you were unable to express yourself or be yourself. Think about when, I don't know, there's just so many things in life.
Sure.
Yeah, or, just behaviors that we overcame, that we learned from, or, other people that we learned from. Yeah, so many, like, I heard Joyce Carol Oates defined the term bibliomemoir. It was a memoir of her life shaped around the books she's read and that have been important to her. Some people write hybrid memoirs these days. Like I'm actually writing a memoir in part about these heart problems I have and how they intersect with a lot of behavior in my life. So I am getting a little bit into the medical stuff of the heart problems, but also talking about the life experiences. And that's a very
Oh,
popular form these days. So I don't know,
wow.
read memoirs. Like this is the
Yeah.
common writer advice is just read in your genre, see how other people are doing it. Memoir is such an inventive field these days. People are writing so many different types of memoirs and they're writing them in such creative ways. So I just feel like this is a great time for memoir. Yeah.
I, I have so many questions, and if you don't have time, just say so. But I want to find out how you went about uh, creating the work, The Art of Brevity. But I also want to find out what's the latest on your television show series. Is
Ah.
that happening?
Yeah, so The Art of Brevity is a book that I wrote. I mentioned earlier that I was really into writing flash fiction and these 100-word stories, and I have had this website for about 15 years. And yeah, so and the thing about writing these tiny stories is they've influenced the way I write the longer stories. So the memoir that I'm writing now is very kind of elliptical. It weaves through fragments, snapshots. Snapshots is the metaphor I use for most of my writing. I'm capturing little snapshots and tying them together. And so the Art of Brevity, it's one part, craft book. There are writing exercises in it, but it's one part just kind of meditation on the aesthetic of writing with brevity, which I think everybody actually needs to learn. I mean, I think most of our education is focused on teaching people how to write longer, except for Chuck. And really, we need to write. Writing shorter is like the key to being a really good writer. And then the second part, the TV show. Yeah, the TV show, man, TV shows. It's called America's Next Great Author. It's a reality TV show. It's kind of like American Idol, but for writers. And it's amazing. It's harder to get a TV show made than to publish a book, definitely, but similar. They take a long time. And so we have signed on with Canopy. That's Canopy with a K, which is kind of like Netflix for libraries. So if you have a library card, it's likely that you have access to Canopy. Many people don't know about it though. And so Canopy is investing in original content like ours in order to up their visibility. So we are negotiating or planning a development schedule to go into production hopefully this year. Yeah.
Really?
But you
Well, tell
never
people,
know until you turn those cameras on. Sometimes shows get made and not aired. You know, it's crazy. Yeah,
tell
but it's,
people the premise of the show. I think it's absolutely fascinating.
yeah, you know, there are reality shows for about every kind of profession and person in the world except writers. And I think that's because, in part, because writing, you know, you think of it as not a visual or dramatic activity. So we are trying to make it as visual and dramatic and compelling as possible. And so I think the show operates in three acts. So one act is like hosting these events called Pitchapaloozas, where, you know, we might fill up a bookstore in Des Moines and have 10 or 20 people pitch their book. They'll get 1 minute each, and they'll get critiqued, and then the winner of that will get invited to go to what we're calling the Writers' House. We're going to go 6 American cities, not cities that have, they're not Brooklyn, not San Francisco, but cities that aren't whatever, that, that cities with publishing centers. And so 6 people will be in a house together, kind of like The Real World, if you know that show from the 90s. It's still on though. But they'll be living together for a month and writing a novel, and we have a bunch of like creative challenges that they have to do to make it like visual and dramatic. And then the winner will get a publishing contract.
Could it be in this day and age with how the barrier to entry is pretty much gone in terms of broadcasting
Mm-hmm.
capability? Could you just take it take it to Substack or something like that without going through a traditional?
Absolutely, and that's kind of been on our mind. I mean, because the streamers are in a state of crisis right now, and they're all consolidating. Um, and yeah, that's a great model. I mean, I think like what we're envisioning is Canopy giving that platform to the show and that visibility, because like Canopy actually has access to 175 million library card holders, which is a
Really?
bigger audience than Netflix. So it's a tremendous opportunity there. And then we can license the show to like Netflix and others afterwards. And we're hoping that it gets big enough that we can spin it off into other countries. Like maybe there'll be a Latin American version of it, you know.
How do you
So
monetize it, Grant? How do you fund it?
getting sponsors. So I'm constantly out there hustling for funders. You know, that's, you know,
Okay.
TV shows are so weird these days. Like Gus Van Sant just wrote, he made a movie. He makes small independent movies. Small means $10 million budget. So he got 100 executive producers. The convention used to be you'd have 5 or 6 executive producers, but so it's a totally different funding model to like get 100 in there. Some people crowdfund their films, or you know, there's just a lot of different ways to go about it, and that's what takes a while. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, did you have a chance to talk to our resident director, Peter Hedges, at the
I
last
did, yeah.
Oklahoma?
We talked about it, and we talked about the show, and yeah, he very familiar with all these like stops and starts and starts and
Yeah.
stops, and yeah, it's just pretty common. You know, I heard listened on a podcast, you know, like a show like Mad Men, which to me is like one of the perfect TV shows of all time. It took 15 years to get that made.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, so it's yeah, it's tough.
Well, I want to be sensitive to your time constraints, Grant. And I really thank you for coming on this call. You're going to be at Beaverdale Books on
Yep.
January 23rd. I can't remember whether it's 6:30 or 7:30, but it would be on, it's in my column, and I will certainly include that information when I, yes, the new
There it
book.
is.
Yay.
There it is.
Yay.
Beautiful,
Congratulations. And
beautiful
if
story.
I don't see you before, I will see you in Okoboji, my dear.
Yeah,
Well, actually, I will see you on the call, the the memoir call.
there we
I'm si-
go.
I'm signing up.
All right, good.
All
Everybody
right.
sign up. So nice chatting with you. I hope to see you at Beaverdale Books. Yeah, Julie's got a great thing going, and we're going to get Chuck to write his memoir in short form. Okay,
Okay, great.
okay.
Thanks, Grant.
Bye bye. I'm going to read
Bye.
the chat here.
Okay, good. And by the way, anybody else on the call, I had said that Grant needed to hop off earlier. If you wanted to have a conversation about what's going on with ICE, I'm fascinated to learn how you are handling the emotional roller coaster that we seem to be on as a country. If you don't have anything particular to share about that, that's fine. But if there is a need for us kind of vent and share our experience. I'm all for taking some time to do that this morning too. In fact, I'm going to call on Kathleen. Kathleen Murin, why don't you tell me what you're thinking about this? You'll need to turn your microphone on, but what's your about ICE, about what's going on in the country today? How are you
Okay.
coping?
Well, I went to the Ice Out protest on Saturday at the Evelyn Davis Park. I thought it was a great gathering, even though it chose to snow for the exact time that we were all there. But it was a shelter for most of the 250 people. Got good coverage in KCCI. I thought the speakers were great, and I think I agree mostly with the bottom line I think is we just got to show up and not sit home and feel crap about it and worry about how we're losing our country, which is kind of what I worry about.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about another subject here, or at least my kids have given me a subscription to My Story, which I think is on NPR, which is similar kind of thing about they send you questions and then you write about them and then you publish them eventually. So it seems to be a thing. Maybe it's our age and stage, but I don't think of myself as a writer either. So I'll be interested after this conversation, Julie, to see how that goes.
Good.
But mostly I try to not read too much negative stuff, but I do look for a couple of places for where activity is happening. Just stay on top of a protest. Thanks.
Bob, excuse me, Bob Leonard, I want to call on you if you don't mind. I don't think you were on the call when I was telling people about the series you and Jason are doing. It's so powerful and so important. But if you can, turn your microphone on and talk about what was going on with you that instigated this series about interviewing women who've been incarcerated. Nope, lost you. Oh, well, no, gonna try again. Go for it, Bob. Or Barry Pyatt, I'll call on you. And okay, there you go.
Sorry, I'm on my phone. I'm not used to doing my phone. I fumble around with it. I'm doing some demolition today, so I was just listening. Kathleen, I was at that protest too, and I guess I missed seeing you, but I think you're right. We have to keep showing up. And I'll talk about the women in a minute, but I want to say that Christopher Rufo, who's the pseudo-intellectual behind all this stuff that's happening. I saw he wrote a month or so ago that the purpose of what they're doing is not to, in the MAGA movement, is not to do anything to reflect reality. They want to create reality. And so when Kristi Noem is lying, when Donald Trump is lying, when J.D. Vance is lying, it's on purpose to create a narrative that other people that don't look as closely as we do at the videos or think about things or consume a variety of media. Remember, they want to create the lies. And so that's their purpose. They're creating a reality. Donald Trump, using the White House webpage to rewrite history. I mean, that's what we're up against. We're not up against people that just see something different from we do. Most of the time they're seeing the same thing and they're lying about it for their agenda. And yeah, for the women, if you get a chance to read these women, Jason Wall-Smith is a fantastic photographer, and he captures the moment. Even when the women in the most recent one didn't want to have their faces identified and wanted pseudonyms, Jason captured them perfectly. And I was going to ask Grant, but I couldn't find the unmute when Julie called on me. But these are smart women that had terrible things happen to them. And it's like they're all philosophers. And I was going to ask Grant, it seems that so many times in our lives, people tell us that we're not good enough and that so we don't do some things. And it's just like these women are finally now finding their power, and I'm encouraging them to write. But anyway, I'm rambling. I don't know if that's what you wanted me to do or not, Julie, but there it is.
No, that's good. I've got a scholarship set aside for one of these incarcerated women, formerly incarcerated women. If you would like to let me know who you think would be a good fit for that. Pat, Pat Shipley, if you are able to come on, tell us what's going on in Page County. You've kind of shocked me in the chat about events in Page County, which is in a corner of the state that you don't expect to have people show up for protest.
No,
Pat?
we have purposefully planned every one of these times when there has been some action nationally. There have been no less than 2 to 4 events in Southwest Iowa. We have done that. While we may not have the numbers, we do have people interested. This one, because it came up so quickly, the folks in Page County were able to do it. It was really cold on Saturday. I lasted an hour, but then I couldn't feel my hands and my feet. So I decided it was time to go home. And there was an event in Council Bluffs as well, a bigger one. There was one day in Council Bluffs, the other in Omaha. So my point is, do not make assumptions about Southern Iowa. Do not make assumptions that we are just all of the same ilk and don't have progressive ideas, because I am, as a person, becoming very weary of that. So I just wanted to put that in there to say, yeah, don't discount us. And there are things going on. There are many of us that have been doing this from the very beginning. What we have been doing has been under the auspices of Indivisible because it's nonpartisan. And so that is why we've been organizing in that way. And every time I get together with these folks, I ask, so did you get your check yet? Did anybody bus you here? Did anybody pay for your gas? I think it's important to verbalize that, because I think that we even had somebody in Clarinda yell out the pickup truck window, "You're bussed in from out of state." And we all looked around and went, this was either, there were 3 counties represented there. Adams, Page, and Montgomery County were in Clarinda. I'm not sure how many counties were represented in Shenandoah. I'm betting probably Fremont, Page, and maybe more Montgomery County people there. So it's not just a single county. There's multiple counties. We're small, but we're loud and we enjoy doing it. So there we
Are you registering people to vote? Are there other activities beyond showing up?
We're just showing up like they've been doing
Okay.
in Panora. Panora has been having an event every week at the Casey's in Panora. And the numbers, I believe it's Panora. Carl might know better than me, but I think it is Panora that they're having a concerted effort to have something there every week. We haven't quite gone to that, but you do what you can and make people realize. We had lots of people driving by, giving us thumbs up, honking, and encouraging us. So that's always helpful.
I saw somebody's T-shirt the other day, and I think I'm going to borrow it for the theme for the writers' retreat this year, and that is courage. Courage is contagious.
Yes, it is.
And I think it's so true. And I hadn't really thought much about that before, but when people show up in places that may be unexpected, and stereotypically unexpected, it makes other people feel less alone and more courageous. And Susan Beckman, yeah, go ahead, Pat.
I take great pleasure in wearing my ray gun T-shirts that are ray gun T-shirts when I'm at Okoboji a couple of different times in the summer. And invariably, people will look at me and just go, "Like your shirt." So it gives them the idea that they aren't alone. That's the main thing.
All right. Well, thank you for your courage and your commitments. And thank you all for being on this call. I hope folks do kind of take away projects they're going to start as a result of listening to people like Grant. We have the Okoboji Mastery Circle starting Wednesday, which is going to be a 10-month series of sessions put on from folks who teach at Okoboji. And we have Kali White Van Bali starting it this coming Wednesday. In February, Peter Hedges, the quite famous film director, is going to be doing his session in February, and it goes on and on. We're going to be talking about everything from nonfiction to fiction to memoir to poetry, getting your film produced, etc. So with that, thank you all. Great being with you today, and we'll see you next week.